someone like Suge, who grew up in a 2-parent household, had a pool in his backyard, wasn't a gangster. You know, he wasn't a Pyru blood like some of the people in his neighborhood. He was essentially a good kid, grew up, went to college, played football, and I think he played pro for a little while and so forth. Gets a ton of money, and then now he can push his weight around. Now all these Pyru bloods and everything else like that are now, they all want to be down, and he could tell them to go be violent with whoever he wants to be violent with and so forth, and they're willing to do whatever he wants them to do. And you fast forward 30 years, you see where Suge is right now. It's because of that pushing your weight around. I remember when Vlad TV first started, I started having a bunch of street guys around me. And I remember this one night at an event right here in New York City, I saw some guys that had done a video dissing me, and I'm like, yo, let's go talk to them. And my man like grabbed one of them up and threatened them. And like, these guys were terrified. And I remember thinking in my head, like, I'm never gonna do this again. Because I mean, ultimately they walked away, no one got hurt, no one got punched, no one got smacked, and I'm not gonna say who these guys are, but they know who they are. But I'm like, okay, I got to get off this stupid mentality, because if this guy who had just gotten out of jail and was really like, I remember I looked at him, he had like blood in his eyes. Like he really wanted to do something to these guys. All I had to do was just tell him to go do it. And like, I'm like, yo, if he would have beat these guys up, they would all sue me. And then I would be charged with assault. And then he might go back to jail. I would have to pay all his lawyer fees. And I would feel horrible if he went back to jail, because at the time that was my friend. And I'm like, there's no wins here. Like, this is all different versions of losing. So from that point in, I got real security. I explained to them moving forward, we're never the aggressors in any situation. It's always self-defense. When we go out, unless somebody rolls up on me and threatens me, I'm not approaching someone in an aggressive manner ever again. And I never did it again. And you would think that Durk would have learned at that point, being as rich as he was, being as rich as, as long as he was rich, that he would say, okay, yeah, I got all these guys that'll crash out for me, but this is all going to come back to me eventually. So let me just not do that. But right now he's sitting in a federal holding facility, potentially facing life in prison.
Yeah, and then not only that, but everybody that was kind of under him, their careers weren't as big as his. So with him being out the way, the whole OTF and everyone kind of, it all kind of goes the same way.
Well, now, see, this is the fuzzy part to me. Maybe you know the answer. Because there was an announcement saying that the feds think he was involved in a second murder for hire for the guy that killed his brother DThang.
Yeah.
Now, is he being charged for that or no?
No. He hasn't been charged. They just brought it up. And we're like, hey, well, here's an example of another person that got smacked. But even in that, bro, like, it's not directly him, and I think that's why they're not charging him, because there isn't a direct, like, it's a lot of people around him that are allegedly making this happen and getting in contact with these people, and money getting passed to that person, and, but he hasn't been charged with that. It was just brought up.
Well, from what I understand, the feds have hundreds of gigs of data. They have photos, videos, medical records, and they have a bunch of witness testimony. There's a bunch of co-conspirators on there whose names are redacted. Mm-hmm. And one of those is one of the shooters. And listen, I've gotten DMs from people who are essentially related to some of the other shooters, and they're telling me like that these guys have no real ties to Durk. They're not really like that. So they're surprised they even went along with this. Essentially, and they're saying like, these guys are probably going to cooperate. These guys are not going to do life in prison or 30 years for this guy, because there's no real connection.
There's no loyalty.
They were just paid to do it, and now it didn't work out. You expect them to do 30 years over that? Probably not.
Right.
And these are not like, they don't have rap careers. They're not famous. They're not worried about, internet blowback. It's like, yo, all I got to do is fully cooperate against this guy, and I might get 5 or 10 years. I think that's what's going to happen. So look, I don't have anything personal against Durk. And ultimately, if it comes out that he didn't do it, then I'll say, okay, my bad. I was looking at all the evidence. It seemed like it was one way. It was showing that he was, let free. He was found not guilty. I'll say, okay, I was wrong in my assessment. But at this point, I feel like it's insane. I feel since, like the fact that you took a private jet with, was it OTF Vani, who essentially got the guns, got the cars. He was the driver with one of the cars that ended up doing all the shooting. Like, what are you doing with this guy right now?
No.
And what I've said, and I've had arguments with people about this, I said that if you are a successful person who's legally making money, there's no reason for you to be actively having friendships with active criminals. Now, I have a lot of close friends that used to be criminals, that have done jail time. Some of them have killed people. Some of them have sold tons of drugs, but they've turned their life around and now they're either YouTubers or they have legitimate businesses and so forth. And I completely respect all those people. But I don't have anyone around me that, if we go have dinner, they're going to go rob somebody afterwards. I don't have anyone around me in my life like that anymore.
Right.
And I don't understand why people like Durk surround themselves with people that are still out there robbing, shooting, scamming, whatever the hell else. Remember G Herbo got caught up in that one case with that one guy that was like buying all those fake, using fake credit cards to like buy private flights and hotels and everything else like that. Like, Herbo making real legitimate money. Like, why are you sitting there trying to save a few dollars by having some scammer pay for a private flight? Just fly first class. And then instead, the feds come pick you up. You got to spend $100,000 in lawyer, whatever money you saved, you spend in lawyers' fees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you agree with me? I mean, do you have friends still that are actively criminals right now?
I mean, fuck. I can't control what people do. You know what I'm saying? I'll say I've kept in contact with even people I was in prison with, and it's like people do what they do, bro. I'm not around that shit. I'm not going around that. I'm not around anything at this point. I'm not around gang members. I'm not around. I took all that shit off my Instagram a while ago. Any pictures of me with groups, and it doesn't serve me anymore. I'm 30. It doesn't align with what I'm trying to do career-wise in my personal life. So I've just separated myself from everything, but I'm still in contact with people. I still give a lot of hope to people. A lot of people find inspiration through what I do, and I try to keep in contact for that. But I also say this, I've stopped putting people on because every single fucking person I try to put on, it went south. And they ended up back in jail, back in prison, all type of shit.
Well, look, I mean, keeping in contact with people you went to prison with is perfectly fine. And look, you don't know what people do in their spare time, but you kind of have an idea. Like, I've been in cars with people I was friends with at the time who had illegal guns on them. And I think about that now, about how crazy it is. Because if we got pulled over and he just dropped that gun, in the back seat, and we get pulled over and we both say, it's not my gun, I could have gotten charged with that gun.
Well, I'll say this, right? I had a conversation with somebody years ago who was younger than me. I basically told him, you have to value yourself because no one else will. If you want to project that you're this, you're going to be used just for that. And I try to have a conversation as being someone that was a few years older and I've already gone through some shit, and he sees I'm doing good on YouTube and whatever, I'm getting money, I'm not in the streets, I'm not in any illegal shit. And not long after that, he ends up getting picked up for a murder, attempted murders, and now he's doing life, multiple life sentences. And it just be shit like that, bro. Like, you try to talk to some people, you try to teach them something, but they're gonna do what they're gonna do. And like I said earlier, when I shouted out my boy that just beat his case, I just talked to him. And he was like, yeah, the biggest thing for me, I got to stay away from certain people. I'm like, well, look, you don't have a fucking circle right now. So if you're wise enough to realize what picking the wrong people does, you have the opportunity now to pick the right circle. You have a daughter you got to do it for. You owe it to her. You owe it to your fucking family and to yourself to stay out of there. Now it's just up to you to make the right choice. And I hope that he does, genuinely. But it's, I don't know, bro. People be stuck in that shit.